So good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Tech Council. And I am thrilled on this sunny day in January. It's pretty warm in 2021 to have a chance to do a dive with someone who, as Jonathan says, is a real legend in our tech community, and everyone does know that. So just sit back, have your lunch, and join us because we're going to have some fun with Andy Fraley, entrepreneur, but actually more things than that. So that little tagline doesn't necessarily capture who Andy is and what he's been up to. So we'll have a chance for you to ask questions, and we'll have a chance to mute you. How about that? To make sure that we're not hearing any noises in the background. And I also want to remind everyone that the chat is used for questions for our guest, not to sell your wares and to promote your own businesses. That's not what today is about. So just sit back, relax, enjoy, because I think you're really in for a treat. So I want to thank Huntington Bank for the work that they've done in supporting us along this journey. I think we're on like our 190, I don't know, Jonathan, how many shows have we done so far? It's been our commitment since the pandemic. How many
we're
shows?
Like 194-ish, 5-ish. We're getting close to 200. It's coming.
Okay, so we're going to have a party on the 200th. We haven't
big one.
What that's going to be. But needless to say, Jonathan Kirsting's with us as always, and he's the Vice President of all things media and marketing and storytelling, and making sure that we are telling stories and sharing what's happening here in our region. And as I like to say, against all odds, but we are still Pittsburgh and we're strong, and I'm looking forward to an amazing 2021. So Andy, I'm welcoming Andy Fraley. We have a comma that says entrepreneur, but I think you're a lot of things, and you've been a lot of things, and I don't think entrepreneur captures sort of everything. But first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hope that this finds you safe and sound given all that's happened over this last year. And it's so great to just see your face and to have a chance to talk about your observations, what you're up to, what your journey has been, and all those fun stuff. So how are you doing this year, Andy?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Like everybody else, I'm dealing with situations that everybody's dealing with right about now.
Right.
And, I know you've been talking to my CoManage co-founder, Dave, and we're talking about some of the stuff that we've been up to in the pandemic, which is basically riding bikes together distanced. And he's going to write an article that's going to talk all about the new tech that allows for those types of things to happen. But I'm doing well. I'm taking the same measures a lot of people are taking, but doing well. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. That's great. So let's just start, and like I like to say, set the table. Who is Andy? Who is Andy Fraley?
Well, I'll give the tech perspective of Andy. You're asking a complex question. Yeah. I didn't like the name legend that you used earlier. I'm just a guy who likes tech and have had some great times and some bad times, just like everybody else in their life. I grew up with computers. We call this the computer room. I'm in my office right now. That's one of the computers back there on the wall.
What is that?
That's a Commodore PET. I would have to guess it's like 77 or something like that.
Oh my God.
After that you had the Commodore 64 and the VIC and all that kind of thing. Those are after that one. Before that, before they even had Heathkit, this goes back into the mid 70s, that on the wall, I don't know if you can see it over there.
Yeah.
That's a single board computer called the Kim 1. It's the first 6502 based 8-bit computer, 1K of memory. I laugh when people tell me that they got to get a new computer because they only got a couple gig of memory. So yeah, I learned to program first on a 6502. There was no BASIC. Actually, I was in a computer club with Bill Gates, and he was writing BASIC. That eventually ran on that Kim 1 over there.
So what ran on that? What were the applications then?
Applications.
You like the terminology?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can see it down right. In fact, if you let me share screen, I can show you a close-up of it.
Right, that would be great.
Let me see if I can pull off this tech here and excuse any sharing issues I run into here. See if I can find my photos tab.
So were you writing in like
assembly, 6502, machine language.
Machine language, okay.
Let's see, pull up Excuse me.
So while you go through this, where were you born? Where's your home?
So I was actually, Buhis. I was born in Ohio. I was born in Columbus, and I actually grew up very early on. My dad was working on lasers, and he ended up working for Bell Labs on lasers, the first they call it the Transat projects, the lasers that they strung underneath the ocean to interconnect all the continents. So he was on those projects. He was a laser guy. But he brought home this computer. I don't know if you guys can see this.
Yes, we can.
That's the Kim one. So like you were asking me, how do you program this thing? It looks like a little calculator keyboard down here, and those are hex digits. You literally start typing code. So you have a little code book like A9 is load A, and A0 is load X. I remember all these that's all 6502 stuff. So you type in the stuff, and then you hit plus, and you enter the next thing, you hit plus, and then you hit go. And go goes to address 0 on the computer. You've just typed a whole bunch of stuff in, and when you hit go, it starts running from 0. Initially, and what you can do is you can take over the segments, and we used to write games that would, like we do asteroids, where stuff would be flying at you down the little LED segments here. We're kids. We're just learning to program. And so we'd write simple games on this thing. Now, the games that you could write on the PET, the thing that was behind me, that's a little bit easier because it's got a screen and it's more traditional. But yeah, that Kim 1 thing had no permanent storage until we added cassette storage to it later, where you could save out your program to a cassette and reload it and that kind of stuff. So it was nothing like today. Today, you can pull up something like, a phone, and it's a million times more powerful than that Kim 1 that we were looking at there a second ago. So things have changed quite a bit since 70.
So where did you go to school? Where did you go to college?
So I went to college at MIT in Boston.
Okay.
And I'm a computer science major out of MIT. But I also got pretty deep into the digital hardware design side of things. And when I went to HP, Hewlett Packard out in California, I was doing a combination of hardware and software. I was working on networking equipment. So we built the first Starland 1 hub, which is the twisted pair you probably got plugged into your machine right now. We couldn't get it to run faster than 1 megabit per second back in the day because it would turn into a radio antenna or a radio broadcast system. And so I was working on 1 megabit Ethernet and then 10 megabit Ethernet. HP was one of the first. We were competing with a company called Synoptics and competing at 10 megabit. Who can get 10 megabit to run over twisted pair without turning in a radio station first, basically. And we tried going faster and faster. And we were at 100, and before we could go beyond 100, I bumped into some guys, some professors that were out of Carnegie Mellon at a trade show, networking trade show, computer networking, not like networking, but computer networking trade show. And they were talking about this ATM stuff, and I knew where we were at from an Ethernet perspective, and it was going to be hard to take the next step. And they were already running at 622 megabits, which is faster than 100 megabits. I'm like, And it integrated telephony and computer networking. It was a new technology. And so I always wanted to come back east. I was living in California for almost a decade. And we just had our first son in 1993 and wanted to be a little close. My parents were closer to Philadelphia. So we moved. The FORE professors hired me. That was FORE Systems. It was 1993. I see some FORE people on this line right now.
Right.
Hi, Todd. And there are others. Todd Blummer's on, but I see, I'm sure there are others. So yeah, I moved and I worked with FORE professors. I can't believe that at age, I had to be, 27. At the time, I was considered the adult in the room because I had gone through what HP calls the lobotomy, which is they send you off for 1 week and they teach you management training. And then when you come back, your engineers look at you and say, what happened to you? It's called the lobotomy. It's Dilbert kind of stuff. And it's somewhat true because HP forced you to lay down your design tools and you're no longer coding because you just became a pure manager. So HP took a kind of an old fashioned approach to things. But I joined the FORE professors. That was Francois Onat, Robert and Eric, FORE, F-O-R-E. And there was already a software team. Todd, who's on the line, was already at FORE Systems when I joined. But it was a small team. We grew the team, and we probably had about 200. If you include, we had operations that were in DC and California, so we had a lot of software developers. Even though you think of it as a hardware company, there were probably about 4 times as many software engineers as hardware engineers, just because all the stuff that's happening on these switches, on these products, pretty complex.
So wait a second, before we delve into this iterative journey here, you mentioned something about Bill Gates. What's your relationship there?
You mean, so my brother went to CMU, I went to MIT, just a little bit of sibling rivalry there.
Right.
But he went to Microsoft right out of CMU. And he, it's one of those weird things. He ended up being the 3rd programmer on a very small project, which was called Visual Basic. And then he went on to become the architect of Visual Basic, all the way up to VB7.net, because that was the first .NET version of Visual Basic, and then he left. So my brother and I, like I said, we just had lucky points here and there in our careers. That was the only one he needed. But I have a lot of respect for Bill Gates. I like what the Gates Foundation has been up to. As I mentioned, he was, I think he's probably about 10 years older than my brother, so 7 years older than me. Bill Gates, that is. Mm-hmm. But he was a programmer working on that Kim 1. I literally, I kid you not, I had a pile of paper about 2 inches thick. It was like the fan fold stuff that you print out on a dot matrix printer. That's what they sold. Bill Gates sold me that. $200 for 2 inches of paper. You know what the 2 inches of paper was? It was the 6502 code that you type in on that keyboard.
Oh my God.
So clearly you're not doing this until you could have permanent storage. So my father, who's he's much more into the hardware engineering side of things, built the cassette recorder and D-Day converter and all this kind of stuff to save out onto cassette tape and load back. So after we had that, we took Bill Gates' program, my father, my brother, and me, sat around this thing for a couple weekends and typed it all in. And that was BASIC that ran on a Kim 1.
Wow.
So Bill Gates got started pretty darn early. I think we were in a coding contest together. Well, Bill Gates was in the group that we were competing against. And my brother and I won this little contest, like how much can you possibly do in 1 line of code? So, you got single letter variables and it's very terse. You only have 256 bytes in 1 line of BASIC back in the day. But so now those are old days.
So what about, so then you're at FORE Systems, right? So there you are sort of early on, and FORE System has an exit.
Right.
Where were you? Like, where were you back into the journey?
I had pre-exited, I guess you could say. FORE Systems, well, no, that's not true. FORE Systems went public in 1994. But then was bought again in 1999. I left in 1998. July 4th, 1998, and co-founded CoManage with Dave Nelson. And just like I was at HP, I was working on hardware and software. I was working on something called HP OpenView, which was network management software. It became a $4 billion business. So I was one of the earlier developers in the HP OpenView team, and my team developed HP OpenView products. So I had a network management background. At FORE, I started working on network management stuff, but then also managed other aspects of software across FORE. But after I left FORE, I kind of went back into my playground of network management. We built a company around network management called CoManage. And we built, at the time, all of the telecom operators had gone through the Telecom Dereg Act of 1996. So you got people selling DSL everywhere, Covad, North Point Rhythms. We basically built the shovels and the blue jeans to sell to the miners. So we sold software that allowed them to run their networks. They could buy their equipment, buy our software, put a small team together, and boom, offer service. That's what we built. And we sold that in 2005. I stayed around for a while, but left after it got bought by a public company.
Right.
So we sold to a Canadian company called Synthesis, and they got bought by a public company out of India called Subex. And I left after that. And you interviewed me when I started my next job. That was 2010. You and I talked a decade ago, Audrey. It's hard to believe that the interview was.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So, so then what? So now keep going because there's still more to unravel.
Networking, computer networking went through something they called the Ice Age. It happened starting when the towers fell. Telecom had melted down about 6 months after the dot-com crash. In October of 2000, telecom crashed.
Right.
And it never really recovered until 2005. And the recovery was, you call it limp. It was never the business it was. It was the heyday. SaaS was becoming the new thing. So I joined a SaaS company. I joined SnapRetail. They had already built a first product, and we went from there to build on that and expand it. And so I was at SnapRetail with Ted Thiel and team for about 3 years. And I left at the end of 2012 to retire. And then a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. I mentioned in a early discussion that Dave Mawhinney had approached me about SnapRetail because he was friends. It's a small town. That's one point I'm making.
Tell
here.
everyone who Dave is now, so some people might not know.
So Dave at the time was a CEO at a company called MSpoke. MSpoke sold to LinkedIn, and they were working on some pretty wild stuff that would do feed management and would do parsing of English text and feed you the news that you like. Looking back on that, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, but that's what they were building. And it got bought by LinkedIn. Dave was the CEO at the time, and he had left and then had joined CMU. And he manages entrepreneurship program at CMU. Sean Ammirati works closely with him. Sean Ammirati took over as CEO of MSpoke, but then joined Birchmere Ventures as a VC. And it was Sean who approached me after I quote unquote retired in 2012 and told me about the Resumator and Don Charlton. And they had built a product and they were working to scale up their engineering team. So there's a pattern here. When I joined FORE Systems, they had a real small engineering team, and I came in, and with what little lobotomy management training I had from HP, helped grow the team. And similarly at both SnapRetail and CoManage, it was starting with a small team and then growing that team, building and scaling out the product, as well as all the processes and things that go along with it. And I think anybody on the call probably knows software development in the 1980s and 1990s compared to what software development looks like right now. It's night and day. The processes are, you hear waterfall. I was pre-waterfall, and now everything is agile and beyond. So not only have the computers changed incredibly, so has the way we think about and deliver software.
Well, so there you were at Resumator, which everyone might need to be reminded is called JazzHR right now.
Yes.
And so you stayed there until
2015.
Right.
And this time I really meant to retire. And I hate to use that word retire.
I know. What does that mean? It doesn't seem like you use that word correctly.
No, I don't. When I quote unquote retired, I spent a couple of years building a house for my son and my one son. And then I've been involved in all sorts of different stuff, including there's a place called Bethany House in Northview Heights. And I helped build out a computer lab there, and we're setting up programs at Bethany House. That's evolved quite a lot, and it's going through a new ground up rebuilding right now.
What is Bethany House?
Well, it's kind of a go-to location for kids in Northview Heights. And it provides after-school programs, mentoring, and the thing I was focusing on was really the tech, just exposing them. Kind of like, I had access to that computer when I was 8 to 9 years old. Actually, not that one. The Kim was when I was 8 or 9 years old, just getting the kids exposed. So we had about a dozen iMacs in this lab that we had built out, and we were just letting the kids play and seeing, and if some of them would respond, we'd go deeper. And it's like, oh, here's how some of this works. Like, this is JavaScript, this is HTML, that kind of stuff. So I was working on that. More recently, the last 3 years, from 2018 till now, I've been working with an organization called Ingomar Living Waters, And I know you said that you're not allowed to sell in the
Well, you are.
chat stream. Can I sell?
You're the only one.
All
You're
right,
the
I have
only one.
Audrey's permission. I can sell.
Exactly.
Let me give you quote unquote the elevator pitch.
Mhm.
We basically there's an estimate out there that there's about $20 billion worth of water projects to be completed to get everybody in the planet clean water. So when you look at 20 billion and the fact that in the United States, we spend about 400 billion on Christmas presents every year or holiday gifts every year, that kind of paints out a picture of what it would take. You know, there's many individuals on the planet that could write one check that would be done with it. But we collect water to, or money to do water projects. And we have partners to get us anywhere around the world. So we're in Peru, we're in Haiti, we're in India, we're in South Sudan, we're all over. And that's through a partner network. So we don't actually drill the wells, but we work with partner companies that basically have drillers in country in all these different countries.
Okay.
And what we found out was about 2 years ago, we had a very specific village that we featured that needed water. They had to walk 5 miles. We had pictures and everything. We had one person walk up and said, I will solve that problem. And then we showed another picture because we had all these projects that we were trying to get funded. And another person said, I will solve that one. And we've evolved into how we handle things. And now what we do is we basically, we sell wells. And so it starts at $1,500. It's hard to believe, but depending on where you are in the world, depending on density, one $1,500 well can serve about 1,500 to 1,600 people. So, I mean, the impact that you can have for $1,500, we don't even think about it. You know, you get the latest version of this, you can be spending $1,500, or you can like help 1,600 people, of which, you know, you're getting 0.5% to 1% of their population that's dying from diseases related to. So probably don't have to sell too much, but I will say anybody on this feed, please go to Ingomar, I-N-G-O.
Put it on. We put it up.
Thank you very much. IngomarLivingWater.org. And I mean, if anybody is compelled, we have shifted our model. So we don't just collect money and do general fundraise. We're project by project. And if you or a group of people at a company, at a church, would love to fund a well, I'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Well, you did a great job.
$1,500, $4,500, $6,000, $12,000. We hit them all. It depends. The price depends on the complexity usually of accessing water. Sometimes.
So would anyone, let me do one thing. Would anyone be interested out there to commit to this today? If so, look at this, Kip Mueller. He's in for a well. Who's with me? So if anyone else, look, Jeremiah Lancaster in. Okay. So anyone else, just keep putting that feed out there. This is the guy, Andy, who I allowed to sell on the show for an amazing, amazing intent. And look, Brian Kennedy, he's in. Jonathan Kirsting, he's in. Greg Kale, he's in. All right, we're going to keep this going as I begin to ask some more questions. Thank you for your leadership on that. So what do you think for Pittsburgh, Andy? Andy, I want you to be a little bit of a commentator, a tech geek, guru commentator.
I mean, I love Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's my home.
Okay, so what is it?
I'm a transplant, but what I love about Pittsburgh is we have all of the resources of a Boston with MIT, where I came from, or Northern California with Stanford, and we have all of that. I was going to share my screen here earlier. I don't know if I can still. No, you got me blocked. But you know, one of the stories I think Dave, the co-founder of CoManage, is going to share in an upcoming TEQ is we're out mountain bike riding, and we're 1 minute drive away from the heart of the city, and you're like in the middle of nowhere in these woods that you wouldn't think there was a city within 50 miles. Or you pop out around the edge of this curve and you're looking at the point, and it's stunning, right? We have all that. We have amazing tech people. I kind of joked with my brother about CMU earlier, and I'm from MIT and all that. But I mean, CMU is a pretty kick butt tech university. And, you know, a lot of the tech that's happening now, robotics, all the machine learning stuff. Look at CMU's position, all that. Look at Google Pittsburgh and why they are here. we have something very, very special. And in all this, you can drive downtown and see the Pens in a 15-minute drive. I used to have to drive 2 hours to get into the heart of the bay to watch the Sharks.
So you remain bullish? You remain bullish?
Oh, I love Pittsburgh. I will always be bullish. I think we should try to be who we are and not who we aren't. You know, we
Right.
look at Boston and Austin and
Mhm.
the Bay and we say, oh, we want to be like them. I think that's a mistake. I think we should accentuate what we are. Like, look at, I was amazed. This whole thing with Dave Nelson, he's going to write an article in upcoming TEQ.
Right.
Back to this whole, how am I doing the pandemic and everything? I play soccer, I play tennis. I made a decision at the beginning of the year, I shouldn't say, March, that, well, I'm not going to do those things anymore. But I had a bike I bought in 1990. It was a mountain bike. I had a kid, and shortly after that, and I started riding I didn't ride it very much, and honestly back then, maybe a dozen rides, and I put it in my basement, sat in my basement until 2000 or 2020, right? And so I pulled my bike out. It's a Gary Fisher Hukui Ku, for those who are into bikes. It's Gary Fisher, got bought by Trek. I could even put a picture of it up. But so I got this bike and pulled it out of my basement. There's my bike. Look at the shocks on that thing, the rear shocks and the front shocks.
Wow.
Kind of joking, there are no shocks in 1990. And I take this thing out in the woods and I said, this is amazing. I went to North Park. I didn't know at the time, but there's 65 miles of trails in North Park. I called Dave, my old buddy, and I said, Dave, what are you doing for exercise during the pandemic? Would you be interested in joining me on a bike ride? And we planned out how we could do this with tech. Like, I have earbuds in my ears, he has in his. I say, hey, Google, call Dave Nelson. We have a map. You can see there's a mount right in my handlebars where I put my phone, and we're running a map, and it's GPS based. So it tells me, turn right, turn left in the trails. You're deep in these trails, far away from anything. It took us 8 sessions to ride all the trails in North Park. There's, 65 miles of trails. And then when we finish North Park, it's like, is there anything else like this around? And then we go to Settler's Cabin, and we go to, Bavington, we're all over the place.
Mhm.
We have not finished Allegheny County in a year. So it's amazing what the resources that we've got. That's just one example. I'm out there on my bike, here we are at the Point. Of
Nice.
course, that's a classic, but on mountain bikes, you don't want to be riding flat trails around the Point. That's Settler's Cabin there. That's called Table Rock. It's Settler's Cabin. That's Dave.
Oh, there's Dave. Awesome.
And this is, you're literally riding up Mount Washington on this trail. It pops out. There's a part where there's this massive cliff above you and about a 3-foot path. And if you lean to the downward side of the 3-foot path for about a 20-foot ride, you're dead. We didn't like that. I was a chicken. I walked across that part. But we love all the other trails. And you see the view here. Clearly, what the rest of the view looks like. It's beautiful. And that's unique. That's Pittsburgh. So I would ask the question back to you, what are the other things that are unique to Pittsburgh? Play those up. Don't try to be the other guys.
Yeah.
We have something better.
Well, that's actually what we believe in at the Tech Council. We don't believe in saying that, we're going to be Silicon Valley, et cetera. And Jonathan, who is, as you know, a expert maniacal cyclist of all kinds, we have always said that the secret sauce is that round, what you just conveyed in terms of our amenities and the differentiators.
Yeah.
So we hope to continue to talk about this. I am so glad. Where do we follow up to for these donations though? I need to know that. Should I just take their names and then?
Yeah. If you get me contact info, we'll take care of it.
Okay.
I gotta say, I'm close to tears here. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you guys are all doing. That is amazing. We'll see if we can get you a well or two or whatever you guys.
Yeah, it looks like we already have at least.
Got a well, man. We're doing it.
Andy, I think we have 2 wells funded so far, if I'm doing it correctly, but we will make sure. So Andy, you also are an angel investor. I know that you are a mentor. Can people reach out to you just directly?
I mean, I'm happy to answer informal questions, spend an hour on the phone here and there with people that have any questions. I don't, I don't consider myself a full-time investor or entrepreneur anymore, except to say that we are building infrastructure at Ingham Living Waters to connect donors with their wells and all the communication stuff. So
There you go.
I still get to work on software. Isn't it great? But I'm happy to have a call with anybody who has questions. I mean, I only share what I can share. I've gotten lucky at different points in my career, and I've made plenty of mistakes. I can tell a lot of people what not to do,
which is great. That's important.
So I'm happy to share those things. Sure, you can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to talk to people.
Okay, so we're going to follow up on the donations today. I'm glad we had a chance to hear about that. I'm glad we had a chance to hear about a little bit about your own personal journey. And I'm glad, to tell you the truth, that you're here and that you're making Pittsburgh even better. So, look what Brian said, who knew we would dig a well on today's show, right? And that's really important. So we're going to follow up with you, Andy. We also have a story, I believe, Jonathan, that's going to be coming up on TQ. We should probably do some more stuff around cycling and the outdoors. So we're going to take that as a to-do. Awesome. And Andy, I'm glad you're staying safe. I'm glad you're staying connected, and I love hearing just the beginnings of all of your work. And we're, to us, you're better than Bill Gates. So really appreciate that story as well. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Andy for joining us. He's the bomb. And we will follow up on the contributions to the organization. And what else is going on, Jonathan? I know Monday is, we have
superintendent roundtable. We got 6 superintendents from across school districts here to talk about equity in education. Should be a really good conversation. And we're taking tomorrow off to gear up for Monday. So it should be a really good show. We have
the Ajit Pai next week.
On Tuesday,
the head of the FCC. He is bookending his career with us because he started his first opening speech and presence was in Pittsburgh. He has a lot of love for Pittsburgh. He himself is a Midwest guy, and his wife is from Youngstown, and he is going to bookend his career with us next week. So it's always
fun. Too.
Right. So I want to thank everyone. Thank Andy for being so terrific and taking the time with us. And we will see everyone on Monday. Andy, thank you so much.